It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is CEO Mark O'Brien. Mark most recently served as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Mizuno USA. And before joining Mizuno in 2015, he served as Chief Marketing Officer and Senior Vice President for Boys and Girls Club of America, the leading youth development organization in the world. Prior to that, he held executive positions at Honey Baked Ham, Johnsonville Sausage, and the Miller Brewing Company. After graduating from St Norbert College, he pursued his master's in sports management from Georgia Southern University. Mark O'Brien, welcome into the corner office.
Brant, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today.
Just tell us a little bit about your early years, where you grew up and what you were like as a kid.
Well, let's see. I grew up in a little village called Greendale. It's in the state of Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee. And so Greendale, Wisconsin is my hometown. And my parents are both originally from England. My father's from Dagenham. My mother's from Hemel Hempstead. So my sister and I are first generation here.
Wow, that's terrific.
Which was exciting.
Well, the Wisconsin birth explains the Packers fans, obviously.
Exactly. That explains a lot. For me, it was a great childhood because I had parents that were literally from another country, first time here. So I had a very different experience than maybe some of my friends whose parents and grandparents and great grandparents had been in the U.S. longer and had their roots here, and was very fortunate to have an understanding of not only my parents' upbringing in England, but then also have a great relationship with my sister Michelle, and just was very fortunate. She's my big sister, but she was paramount in my early years as a child, and we were really close as we navigated, all sorts of challenges as children do.
That's terrific. And did mom and dad immigrate for work over here, or was it, coming over there when they were in their younger years?
Yeah, it's a great story. My mother came over with her parents at the latter part of her high school years and went back to England. And my mother and father had known each other in high school, but they were on the opposite side of the tracks. So rival schools, so to speak. And my father, they were smitten at the age of 18, 19 years old. And my father jumped on the boat and literally sailed across the ocean and joined my mother's family in New York. They were going to be actually headed to Atlanta, Georgia, but they were diverted to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for reasons still unknown to me today. But
that's quite a diversion.
It's a significant diversion. But then, so with $19 my dad had in his pocket, he made a go of it in the U.S. and did very well for himself.
Great story. So what business was he in as you were growing up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, he was actually, he would tell you he sold socks. He was in retail, but he did custom suits. So he's always visiting New York and going to the various fabric shows and what have you to bring the best fabrics and the best materials for custom making suits in not only Milwaukee, but across the Midwest and certainly across the country as businessmen came to Milwaukee to do business. So, and it was great because he literally, we'd go to a Bucks game and he'd know everybody in the arena. Just as a little boy, I just remember everybody coming up to shake my dad's hand and wish him well.
Awesome. And was your mom a stay-at-home mom, or did she work as well?
No, she worked as well. She stayed at home the first few years, but then she worked as well. She was worked as an executive assistant throughout her career for a couple different country clubs in the Milwaukee area, and was very successful in her own right in her industry, and proud of what she accomplished as a professional as well.
Got it. Cool. So tell us a little bit about your early school years. Did you attend public school, private school? Were you a good student?
I was all in on the public schools. I was not the smartest kid in the class, but I was the kid that would work as hard as anyone, and I think that's weaves throughout my story, even to this day, is the hard work piece.
Sports became a big part of your career later on, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But what kind of sports did you play in school?
Well, early on, it was, everything and anything. I think to my dad's chagrin, my father, growing up in England, he was what they would call football, what we would call soccer. He was a huge soccer fan.
Right.
And unfortunately, that wasn't the sport I chose. I played football, baseball, basketball, tennis, swam for fun. But as I got older, and through middle school and high school, started to really focus in on baseball, basketball, and football. And then in high school, I started to really focus on baseball. And ultimately that led to an opportunity to play. I jokingly refer to it as Division 27 baseball, but Division 3 baseball, and allowed me to continue to enjoy my passion, which is baseball, and pursue my education as well. So that was a win-win.
So, other than sports outside of class, any early leadership roles or entrepreneurial things? Did you have a paper route? Did you sell mistletoe at Christmas time? Tell us a little bit about maybe any of those ventures early on, if any.
Brant, I think I missed the mistletoe gig, but I did. I had a paper route. I actually, my first job was cutting lawns. It kept me outside. It gave me an opportunity to do something around the neighborhood and keep busy. And when I wasn't playing sports, I'd find something else to do. And we did everything from, I was cut the grass, did the paper route. I had a morning route, so I was up at 5 a.m. delivering papers on my bike. And if you can imagine doing that in
Wisconsin,
the months of December and January, not an easy task.
I can imagine.
And a few mornings where I went head over heels over the handlebars because of the snow and slickness of the hills and what have you. But yeah, I was a busboy as well, and then I had a couple different mall jobs.
Was this in high school or junior high school? Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that got me into high school, and then I was involved in DECA in high school as well, which gave me an opportunity to really start to hone my thinking around business and sales and marketing.
Sounds like you're pretty busy with working retail and, keeping your grades up and being involved in DECA. Anything else involved in the school years? Any other clubs or interests, drama, class, politics, that type of thing? Or is that pretty much your full plate, so to speak?
Yeah, it was primarily sports. There were some extracurricular activities with DECA. I started a program at our high school called Alateen, which was, core to my, my beliefs and my background. And Alateen is it's a little personal, but it speaks to kids that come from families that have alcoholism.
12-step.
Yeah, 12-step program.
Yeah, 12-step families.
And I think that, that also presents a really interesting foundation to approaching challenges and personally and in business. So I think that was also another great, foundational component in my early years.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. And St Norbert College, tell me a little bit about the choice to go there. And, do you have an idea of what you wanted to do when you did?
I did. I knew early on I wanted to play baseball professionally. And then not soon after that, I figured out that really wasn't going to happen. So the opportunity to play in college at a Division II or Division III level was of interest. I just wasn't quite didn't quite have the talent to play maybe at a Division I or the appropriate Division I school. And St. Norbert was just, I went and visited the campus. It's up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's a fantastic institution, and it was perfect for what I was looking for. I needed a smaller school that could help me stay focused on my academics and my education, but also give me an outlet to participate in baseball and the sport that I love and has been so core to
Awesome.
my background.
Were they Division II or Division III?
Division III, and
Yeah.
great experience. We traveled. We were competitive. Great group of guys, and I played freshman through junior year. I didn't play my senior year, so I played 3 years,
Yeah.
and it's a great school. I mean, it's a liberal arts school, small school, but
Private
yep,
institution?
private liberal arts.
Is it in the Jesuit tradition? The saint kind of gave it away, but I know many of those saints have converted over the years.
So it was, it provided a religious backdrop, which is also, enabled me to explore some of my thoughts and beliefs, and at a younger age. And I can't speak, more highly of St. Norbert College.
Yeah, awesome. Is faith a pretty important foundation of your life and career?
Unequivocally, yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And so tell us a little bit about what you studied and what were the things that interested you most at St. Norbert's?
Well, initially, I was interested in business and economics, and then I really started to get more intrigued by human behavior and communications. And so I pursued and achieved my degree in communications. And the reason I did that is I think for me, it's truly, it all starts with people. And so understanding the intricacies of communication, both verbal and nonverbal, was of just great interest. And I think, has been and continues to be paramount in how I approach business today.
Were you working during your St. Norbert's year, or fully dedicated as a student athlete?
No, I worked full time in college. Freshman year, I held multiple jobs. I overtasked myself because I was so excited to get involved in so many different activities. Cool. And then I dialed that back. I was a resident assistant my sophomore year, and then I worked security for the campus my last 2 years, and I'd work nearly 40 hours a week for financial purposes, but
help support yourself.
Exactly.
Full time then.
Yeah, exactly. And so worked my way through college, and was fortunate to have opportunities to work through college as I pursued my education and played baseball.
So the thought processes of leaving baseball before you finish your college years.
Yeah, I think when I recognized that my talents were only going to take me so far, and from a actual playing baseball perspective, and I love the sport, and it's a fantastic sport. So I actually, my junior year, I started to reach out to conduct some informational interviews, and I reached out to the GM of at the time the minor league baseball team in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I also cold called the senior vice president of the Milwaukee Brewers at the time. And
wow.
Ironically, when I called the Brewers, I just called the front desk and asked to speak to the guy's name was Laurel Prieb. I doubt he'd remember the story, but I'm forever grateful. He took my call, and so awesome. 1 minute I'm calling, the next literally 10 seconds later, I'm actually speaking with him. And I just asked, I said, hey, I'm a student at St. Norbert. Would you mind taking a few minutes to meet with me if I could come down to your office? I just want to learn about how you got to where you are, and the approach you took, and maybe some advice you could provide a college student. And to his credit, he met with me. And wow, so
that's awesome.
From that day when I walked out of at the time County Stadium, I said, I will do that for any student that reaches out to me.
Yeah. Terrific. Great.
Never forget that.
So did you go to work right away out of St. Norbert's? Did you go right to your graduate school? Tell us a little bit about that period.
Yeah. So based on the advice that I had received from both of my informational interviews, I I actually ended up going to a conference in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, a residence life conference with my roommate from college on our way to spring break, and I met the executive staff of residence life from Georgia Southern University, and they had explained to me that as we were chatting that there's a master's program in sports management, and I had no idea that you could get your master's in sports management
Yeah.
at that time. And so we hit it off, and they said, look, when you get back from your senior spring break trip, call us and let's talk about a potential graduate assistantship. And I wasn't familiar with what a graduate assistantship was at the time. And they explained, well, you can come to college, you can work on your master's, and we'll actually, the assistantship will pay you as you work on your master's. So it was an opportunity where I learned more about Georgia Southern, learned about the master's program in sports management, and then they presented an opportunity to be the resident director of Dorman Hall, which at the time was the football hall on campus. And I became the resident director for Dorman Hall as part of my graduate assistantship, and pursued my master's.
And then that was a 2-year program?
So it was a 2-year program, and I left early. My father had passed away, so I was going through a little bit of a challenging time as a young man. And I went to the baseball winter meetings that December, and I was presented an opportunity to join a minor league baseball organization in the front office. So sounds glamorous, but in the minor leagues, there's really not too much glamorous about the minor leagues.
Right.
You pretty much, you do a little bit of everything, which is fantastic. For me, it gave me such a foundational experience from a business perspective, from finance to sponsorship, sales, marketing, communications, PR, HR. It's just you run the gamut. Procurement, concessions. So you're literally, one day you're working with the mayor on a project in the city, and 3 hours later you might be cooking hot dogs in the concession stand. So it's a great experience, and I was so fortunate to be able to work in minor league baseball.
What were some of those early leadership lessons for you?
I'll say the early leadership lessons always come back to people and the ability to communicate, to provide clarity and be candid in your conversations, but respectful. And it's always being authentic. I think people, no matter who you are, where you come from, they appreciate authenticity and candor, as long as it's respectful. I think my dad, he would take me to his work every once in a while on a Saturday, and I'd get to help out, probably get in the way of everybody, but he made me feel like I was helping out, contributing. And I think those lessons, the fact that he'd work on Saturdays when a lot of people were off, also taught me, the dedication and commitment that he had to his craft and how hard he was working for our family.
Yeah, awesome. What about your faith? Do you think that's influenced your leadership approach in life? And if so, how?
Yeah, no question. I one thing that as people who know me, one of the things that I don't promote it because I think everybody has their own rights and their own right to their beliefs as it pertains to faith, and I respect that immensely. But if people broach the topic with me, I'm happy to share my perspective on it, share my experiences with it. And then I also, I believe heavily in a prayer that I use is the Serenity Prayer. And I practice that on a daily basis. We're all human. So, I'll fail multiple times today alone. And we just need that little pick me up. So the Serenity Prayer to me is something that has been foundational and instrumental in helping me navigate some challenging times.
Some of the lessons, tell us a little bit about that, maybe from some of your early management experiences, maybe citing some of the things you've worked for some just awesome brands and companies over the years. If you had to maybe kind of pull a common thread through some of the things that you've picked up, what would those be?
Yeah, I think the lessons that I've learned is, let's see, I would say first and foremost, it's important to, for each of the brands that I've learned, it's important to have a clear mission, vision, and purpose. And if the business has a clear mission, and I define that as why we come in every day, the vision is how we want to be described in the next 5-10 years, and then the purpose, what are we contributing beyond just the bottom line? Obviously we're in business for the business, but if you can be in business beyond just the bottom line and you're contributing to society in a bigger, more impactful way, that's can be even more rewarding than the financial gains, because you're actually contributing to the benefits of society. And so for me, as the lessons I've learned is the greater clarity there is on your mission, vision, and purpose, with clearly stated values of the organization, and that they're demonstrated consistently, and addressed when they're not demonstrated, because as that's critical and as important. I think for me, that has a profound impact on not only the results of the business, but the culture of the organization and how people feel about the business that they're working for and the company they're working for and what they do day in and day out. And so for me, the lessons learned have been about making sure or understanding a clear mission, vision, and purpose of the organization and the values that define them, and how you as an individual, not just the leader of the organization, but how you as an individual play an important role in making sure that you not only understand that, but deliver on those key components day in and day out.
So true. Do you think that your success, and obviously making it to the corner office as well, also that you have a very personal, clear mission, vision, and purpose and values? And if so, tell us about those.
Yeah, I think as we've talked here, you've heard me talk a lot about people, and I think one of my great joys in life is to work closely with people, collaborate with people, and help them achieve more than they even thought possible. And I love to pour into people, and not that I necessarily know better or that I'm smarter or better by any stretch, but I just love when I'm able to work with people and see them achieve more than they ever thought possible. And I think part of my purpose is exactly that, to be a bit of a servant leader and really try to bring the best out in people in any in every way possible.
That's a very common characteristic. We've heard that so often in many of our podcasts, how important it is. And I've heard it described as kind of the inverted pyramid, right? Exactly. I'm not at the top of the organization. I'm at the bottom. I'm here to support everyone else. You kind of buy into that philosophy as well?
Unequivocally. I mean, I think that's the key to leadership is, there's multiple styles. And for me, my perspective would be the most rewarding and satisfying form of leadership is that inverted pyramid, where you serve others and you serve them by being candid and honest and transparent, and collaborative. And sometimes that means having the difficult conversation. That doesn't mean always being, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. It means being authentic. It means having the difficult conversations, but you're helping them by doing that. And ultimately that helps the business as well.
No question. Well, what about feedback? Over the years, have you gotten feedback from your team on your management style, and what kind of words do they use, and what kind of feedback have you received about that?
Well, I've been humbled by the feedback I've received, and I would say, I'm human, so they will be quick to humble me as well. The feedback I've received is that I'm highly collaborative. They know that I care about them because I have the difficult conversations. I care about the individual. I care about the team. I care about the organization. They will say that I work very hard and have very high expectations, not only of myself but of others. And I've been growing to understand that sometimes my expectations are pretty extremely high. So I'm having to manage, what that means and how I navigate those high expectations and helping people be successful. Now conversely, I have high expectations of myself, so I don't ask others to do something that I wouldn't do, or hold others to a standard that I don't try to hold myself to. And
when you're doing your hiring and looking for people to invest in, what do you look for? What are the things that you want to see when you're making bets on people?
Well, I want to see that they have a positive attitude. I want to really see that they come in not just with every problem in the world, but ideas and solutions. And I think that positive approach is critical, because if they're only coming in with the challenges of the day, that's easy to do. It's people that can say, here are all the challenges that I'm seeing, but here's things we can do to fix them. That's exciting. And then I also look for people that are very passionate about what they do, whatever that might be. It could be an accountant. It could be a sales rep. It could be someone in HR or supply chain or procurement. But if they're really passionate about what they do, that can overcome a lot. And I really look for that positive attitude, a passion for what they do, and then also that ability to overcome challenges, that they don't just give up at the first hurdle, and they really look to overcome challenges and find solutions, even if their first one, two, or three ideas don't work. They're still finding another way, a better way.
Awesome. And how do you interview and hire? What's kind of what you find to be the most effective way to do so when you're either looking at your senior staff or maybe involved in some of the important hires deeper within the organization?
I look for diversity and experience, and so that, when you look around the table, it's not all the same people with the same background and the same interests, because I think diversity of thought can help strengthen an overall business. And I also look for, making sure that you put people in positions that they're most passionate about. And to me, I just mentioned passion earlier. That is so key. That if you can have people working on stuff, the business components that they love to work on, that they're most passionate about, it's almost like it's not work to them, because they love to do it. And it's something that you can't teach if they're truly authentically passionate about it, and they have a diverse background and experience, maybe not even from the same industry, but they can bring a fresh perspective to the team and to the organization and to problem solving. I think that's key. And then how they overcome problems, what their thinking is, and the approach to overcoming those hurdles that I mentioned.
I've heard it said that an ounce of passion sometimes worth a pound of brains. Have you found that in your hiring as well, that sometimes that level of excitement is as important as what you can teach them on the job, or frankly, you can teach them on the job what they need to know, but they need to have that level of enthusiasm?
There's no question, and I think there's a lot to be said for the actual intellectual and really smart individuals, but if they don't have the application or the ability to apply those thoughts and that critical thinking to execution, it's just theoretical. And oftentimes that's where I've seen really smart people struggle. And so I try to find ways to leverage their strengths. What I hate to see is that the intellectuals be put in positions where they not only have to be part of the strategic process, but then the execution side of it, because oftentimes that's a hurdle. And I'm generalizing there, but that's why I really like to play to people's strengths, so that there's a nice handoff, and you leverage the talents that you have on your team. And it's no different for me. I think of it as a baseball team. Putting your catcher at shortstop, probably not the best idea. So
But having somebody with shortstop skills and first baseman skills and pitching skills are all
exactly,
important.
that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. When you're specifically hiring, as a CEO and looking for, key direct reports on your executive team, what, beyond the disciplinary responsibilities, whether they be finance, marketing, or et cetera, what would you say are the key things that you look for from a qualitative standpoint for those direct reports?
I think that emotional intelligence is really important. How they're able to engage team members, persuade and influence, versus just dictate through title or authority. I think people that lack that emotional competency is detrimental to the success of your leadership team. And I think having team members that are able to collectively work together is critical. And I know that sounds probably pretty basic, but I've been surprised just on my experiences how sometimes it's just not the case, and so that creates more challenges if you don't have the right team members in place that have that emotional intelligence and ability to collaborate and drive results together harmoniously. And that doesn't mean you can't disagree. That just means that people are able to work together and work through the challenges
Right.
to get to the best solutions for the business and the organization as a whole.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing with us some of what you think are your best interview questions?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I think this is one of my, one of my, and I try to keep the interviews to 30 to 45 minutes, at least the initial one. And one of the questions that I ask is, I ask them to think about a brand or a business that they admire, and think of three brands, and they name their three brands, and then I say, okay, for each brand, let's dissect each brand, describe a word, 3 words. Give me 3 words to describe each one of those brands. And then they'll describe that brand in those words. And I let them know there's no wrong or right answer. It's just, conversational at this point. And then I said, okay, well, you're a brand. So Brant, you're a brand. You put on your sport coat today, your slacks, maybe a tie, maybe not. That's your packaging. When you walked in and you met your staff today and you shook someone's hand, that's representative of your brand. Maybe you gave them a high five or a flying elbow or a fist bump. I don't know, but that speaks to what your brand is. So I'll ask the candidate, tell me, so you're the brand, Brant. Give me 3 words that describe your brand. And then I ask them, okay, now tell me, how would your current coworkers describe your brand? Would they use those exact same 3 words? And the reason I ask this question, and again, there's no right or wrong answer. I really want to understand how they think of themselves and how they think others think of them.
Yeah.
And then that creates an opportunity to talk about them as a person, and then it inevitably leads into what they're most passionate about, because of the brands that they mentioned prior. Yeah. So that's for me, I found it a really engaging way, an interesting way to speak to potential candidates and team members. And then I also I wrap it up by just really asking them, segue off of the brand question about them, and ask the individual what their greatest 5-star accomplishment is in their career to date, and why. And why is that? Why are they so proud of that experience? What makes them, just like, this is the one experience that I would scream from the mountaintops about because it was so amazing, so awesome. And it's great to hear them talk about that, because it also highlights their passion point. It really brings out what they're most interested in, and then why.
Thank you, Mark. Well, we're just about out of time, so I've got one last question for you, and then I'd love for you to also give us some parting thoughts. But if you were, to give some advice to some of our listeners, particularly those of which that either see themselves or aspire to get to their own corner office, what would some of that advice be in terms of, how they get there and what they might do in their careers to, achieve their highest level of passion and goals for their work?
Yeah, I think you really have to make sure, that you understand what you're most passionate about, what you love to do, why you love to do it. And then as you start your career, understand that it's not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And to take on challenges that make you feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but aren't completely out of your zone of comfort. Because for me, my philosophy, my belief is play to your strengths. And if you play to your strengths,
Right.
Work doesn't need to be the drudgery that it's made out to be by so many. I think if you play to your strengths, you can find something that you truly love to do. You'll be great at doing it. Your career will excel, and you'll continue to grow. And then I think lastly, just be authentic, be true to who you are. And I think that's also very important, because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you're being true to who you are, that's what matters most. And I think that can be a guiding, one of the guideposts for you, personally and professionally. And then I think lastly, just continue to challenge yourself. Always look for that next opportunity to learn and grow.
It's been a pleasure to have you here. This has been a wonderful conversation. Anything else to add that we didn't cover today that you think our audience might be interested in hearing?
No, I thank you for having me, Brant. And, I really appreciate the time and would welcome to anybody that's interested in connecting, or if I can be a resource for anybody, I'd welcome the opportunity, and certainly available on LinkedIn. And that could be a great first step. And certainly appreciate the time you've taken, and look forward to maybe another one down the road at some point.
Fantastic, Mark. Well, you've been very generous with your time, and thank you for you being generous with our audience as well.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You as
Bye
well.
now.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.